While I can't say that I learned to read at an unusually early age, I was raised in a family where reading was part of the daily activity of adults and children. My parents read multiple newspapers, my older brothers had their textbooks, and I was given children's books by relatives. I don't remember the magic moment where, all at once, I could read, but I do have dim memories of learning to write, slowly stringing letters together to form one-syllable words. My love of reading was sparked by my aunt and uncle, who gave me a subscription to National Geographic when I was 4 years old. I couldn't read, but I could look at the illustrations and ask my parents questions. I became fascinated with paleontology and astronomy because to me as a child, they represented the past and future. In the third grade, I was inducted into the enrichment program, the school district's accelerated learning program for gifted children. Writing in particular was promoted. We wrote short stories, poems, and book reports. I wrote a 10-page report on Siamese cats in the third grade, including a table of contents, footnotes, and a bibliography. Each subsequent year, the required length of the reports became longer. By 1979, my report on the solar system was over 40 pages. I remember a mail-order program called Scholastic Book Club, which published children's paperback books. Books cost about 50 cents, and students ordered them together as a class. The books arrived in a few weeks, and it was always a thrill to carry my stack back to the desk. The NASA missions to the Moon and Mars in the late 1960s through the mid-70s filled me with a sense of wonder about the stars and eventual space travel. This spurred a new direction for my reading, science fiction. My first science fiction book was The Runaway Robot by Lester Del Rey. It told the story of a boy and his robot and their adventures as they traveled as stowaways from Jupiter's moon Ganymede to Earth. I was hooked. Science fiction gave me a window to the possibilities found in the imagination. To this day, Ray Bradbury's The Martian Chronicles remains one of my favorite collection of short stories, not for its fantasy, but for the beautiful imagery the author creates in my mind as I read and reread it. In 1977, my literacy expanded by conquering longer and more complex texts. Colleen McCullough's The Thornbirds was published that year and became a must-read novel. The book opened the door for me to adult fiction. Soon more novels followed, including Gone with the Wind, The Winds of War, and the Foundation Trilogy. In college, textbooks became my primary literary resource, and term papers my output for creative writing. Since I majored in French, I now had a second language to contend with. I remember being frustrated with the small doses of French literature we were given in literature classes. The curricula were designed around excerpts from famous novels, but without the full text, it was difficult to pick up the thread of the plot, and the social and historical references included were beyond my comprehension. During the 1990s, I rediscovered Colleen McCullough and her Masters of Rome series, 7 novels that chronicle the history of Rome. These novels appealed to my appreciation of the author's writing style as well as to my interest in history and archaeology. Today, my reading is once again devoted to text required in my course of study. Finding time to read for pleasure is difficult. I tend to gravitate to magazines and newspapers since I can finish articles in one sitting. Currently, I read the Sunday New York Times and subscribe to Time, National Geographic, Astronomy, and Archaeology magazines. I have a stack of books on my nightstand that I promise myself I will read when classes aren't in session. My grandmother believed that if you didn't learn at least one thing each day, the day was wasted. I think her belief is even more relevant today than it was 40 years ago. For adult learners, literacy is the means to a better life. For children, literacy is a means to explore a broader environment than their immediate surroundings. Being able to read and write introduced me to a larger world. I hope that in the future I will be able to help students discover their own larger world.